This is Joanne Allenbaugh with Farms.com, and I'm visiting with Dr. Ken Prusa, who is a true leader and innovator in the field of meat sciences. And you have a panel at Iowa State, and you're doing some interesting work there. Can you tell us about that?
We are. I'm head of the Sensory Center at Iowa State University, and we do a variety of sensory testing because we think that if we want to make sure we have the highest quality pork or the highest quality food products available for consumers. And so if producers are changing genetics or changing feed, or maybe going into a different type of management style, and they have questions of how it's going to affect the tenderness, the juiciness, or the flavor of the product, we can basically take loins or tenderloins and tell them. We actually have trained students and staff that have been fed a variety of different types of pork, so they know what tender pork is, what tough is. And so we actually calibrate them to give us ideas then on is the tenderness or juiciness changing.
We had a fascinating discussion about alternative ingredients in feeds, and tell us a little bit about what you're finding on the quality of the fat and some of those aspects of alternative.
That's a very good question, because with the ethanol industry and corn prices being so high, we are seeing producers go to alternative feed sources like distillers' grains or bakery. We even have some producers that are feeding used pet food and those types of things. And so we have to be very cognizant of how feeding those different ingredients affects pork quality all the way down the line. And any of the higher fat products in the carcass are going to be affected first. And so we always start looking at bellies, because as you know, the belly price pretty well is a profitability of the pig now with all the fast food industry using bacon. And so the belly is very receptive to those changes. And so if we start feeding alternative sources of oils and corn oil, we may see that belly softness increase. And if the belly softness increases, we may have issues with processing it in several of the plants.
There's some new technology coming down the road, though, that you think packers will perhaps be able to implement in the plants?
We are. The biggest thing that we have to do is if we have bellies soft, or we have firm bellies and soft bellies, one of the big issues is looking at a measurement called the iodine value, which actually is an indication of how soft the fat is. To be able to give recommendations to producers or to bacon manufacturers, we have to be able to measure that iodine value. So we need to see some near-infrared technology coming down the line to where we may be able to measure or estimate the iodine value on every carcass that comes down the line. In that case, we can gather much more information, and we can relay that back to the processor or to the producer, so we can all get together on what produces a really good belly.
And if it's a subpar belly, that can have a significant economic value, right?
Significant, because basically if a number one belly goes out to an Oscar Mayer or to a high-quality bacon processor, it's going to command a certain value. If it is a number two belly, if it's damaged or if it's too soft and they can't make high-quality bacon out of it, it's downgraded to a number two. And at current belly prices, it's downgraded to trim price, which is about an 80-cent difference, which is huge if you're killing 5 million pigs a year.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that you'd mentioned, and it ties in with your sensory panels, that when you cook some of these, the pork that has alternative ingredients in it, sometimes that affects the taste and the odor.
Yeah, the pig is the classic example of you are what you eat, because whatever a pig eats, sooner or later it's going to be deposited somewhere in that pig. And so if we feed things that have high flavorants or very, very strong flavors, then there's a chance that it could be deposited right into the tissue. And so in that case, it may not taste like pork anymore. It may taste like something else that we fed the pig, and that's not going to be acceptable.
And that's something that we might not even know until it's on the consumer's plate, right?
Right, and probably the most discerning consumers are the Japanese. We export a lot of pork to Japan out of Iowa, and they like extremely high quality pork. They love Iowa pork. They pay more for it, and basically we don't want anything to happen to that market.
So it's a matter of trying to find the balance between the cost of the ration as well as the quality of the end product.
And that's why we need to do more testing. We have to be able to know what those iodine values are, what affect those feed ingredients, so we can talk with producers and packers, because we want to keep this industry viable.
Dr. Prusa, thank you very much for joining us today.